Hello, everyone. Welcome to All About Energy. Today, I'm joined with Patrick, who's going to be sharing his experience that he had almost 6 months ago through his QHHT session. Welcome, Patrick.
Hello, and thank you for having me.
I am so excited to catch up with you to see how things have been and really get into that session, that amazing session.
Looking forward to talking about it.
You came in with some amazing questions.
Just for your listeners, I'll start at the very beginning. I went, just so they have context, I was listening to the Dolores Cannon Convoluted Universe series. I was fascinated by all the sits and the regressions and things like that. And I thought to myself, well, I got to do one now. I booked a session with you it was scheduled for the end of the month. But then my timeline changed, and I had a thought that something had opened up for you earlier in the month. So I called you back and asked, hey, do you have availability earlier in the month?
Yes, actually, that was really funny because that night, I remember the night before I had someone cancel, and then you just randomly messaged, and I was like, oh, I guess this is the universe. This is meant to happen.
Absolutely. And then when I got there, I immediately felt at home. When I looked at your eyes, I was like, and again, this is depending on what your level of belief is. When I looked at your eyes, I was like, oh, you're one of them.
You said, right outside by the parking lot, you said, oh, it's in the eyes, and you're one of them. And I thought, huh?
Yes, absolutely. Now that I'm thinking about it, we had a conversation on the phone because I was curious about doing a session. And I knew right then and there from our first conversation that everything was going to be cool. I was in a place where I was with somebody that was professional, but more importantly was in tune, because there was no resistance. It was just an easy conversation. It was an easy back and forth. The space was very inviting. I was in a chair or like a couch, and I was sitting across from you, and you were in kind of like a couch and then a shelf that had a bunch of different pieces on there. And one of them, I think, was like a red dove, if I vaguely remember. It's like, and you said it had something to do with something that Dolores always told people to look for when they went into a regression.
Right. That's actually part of our regression. We refer to a red bird. And yeah, you noticed that you described my office right on. It's been months. Very good.
When something high energy, it just makes an immediate imprint in your brain, and it becomes like a photograph. So, you don't forget it at all. And that's really why, like with the regression, I still have all the photographs in my mind of the regression that we had almost 6 months ago without having to listen to the tapes. The tapes definitely stimulated some things, and there were some certain things I remember, but like the big strokes were just photographs that are just like etched in my mind, for better or for worse.
Right. So now let's go down that memory and take a look at, and maybe start from the past life portion, or more importantly, I really want to touch with you on how you connected into that theta state.
That's a good question. Now, the easy answer is I was already there in that theta state once I stepped in the office. That's the easy answer, because the same feeling or sensations that I get when I meditate are the same feelings and sensations I was getting with my eyes open, which was interesting. So how can I describe that? So it's a sense of a sleepy sense of awareness. So you're almost in like a sleep state, but you're aware. And you notice things changing right in front of you. So maybe the walls change color, or maybe even you started to change shape a bit. Again, this is all based on your level of belief, right? You started to change shape, and you know what it was like? And then like you had the vibration and the feeling of, okay, I'm in a, you know what, it's like, if you ever been to a vortex, or you've been to a place that has a lot of crystal energy, right? There's a certain frequency or force or vibration that's given off, and it changes you physiologically. You start to have like sensation and a visceral feeling. And that, with the combination of this sleep state plus the being awake, is what you feel when you're in that theta state. And the only other way that I know to get there is through meditation, to answer your question.
All right. So to clarify, you basically felt while you were in the office that you already were in that space. And I've heard this before with my clients when they're sitting in the office and they're like, wow, okay, hold on a second. What's happening? The energy is different. And so are you saying that's when you started to go under? Or not under, I shouldn't say that word, but that's where you started feeling that energy?
That's correct. So, again, I'll liken it to, the places that I've traveled, where like, that have like a physiological vibrational feeling. It just feels different when you're in that space. So if you've ever been to Sedona, if you've ever been to Hawaii, places that just have like this vibrational signature that is different than when you're in the big city, or if you're out in like nature, right? You get that feeling. So when I first got into the office, I don't know if I made mention of it, but I definitely was like, oh, this feels different. Feels different in here. Like the energy is like clean and very very inviting. Almost kind of a space where you can get put to sleep, without even trying, so yes.
I do recall you saying, you're shifting right now. Like you look different. Like you're looking different. So I do remember that. And I've heard this numerous occasions where people are saying, you're shifting. Like, why are you looking different? There's colors behind you. There's colors on top of you. What's happening? And so it's gotten to a point where that's part of my conversation. Well, people come in my office like, hey, I don't want you to get nervous, because you and I, in discussing this, you're comfortable with it. You didn't flip out. You were just like, oh, okay, I know where I am. Whereas other people might say, why is her face looking different? Or why are there lights behind her? Or, you know, what's happening? So now I've gotten to the point where I share it with them up front.
If anybody that's listening has ever been to like a sit, like an ayahuasca sit, or if they've done mushrooms or anything psychedelic, right? It's very similar to that, where you start where there's, you know, existence before you have your, you take your medicine, and then there's that period of like transition, and then there's, you know, after the fact where you're just all in your journey. It's very similar. Oh, look, it's 4:44. At my time is 4:44. It's very similar to that. So anybody that's listening, you mentioned before, what is the best way to slip into the theta state? One of the key points that I would recommend, treat it like a sit. And what that means is follow a dieta, eat clean, try not to eat heavy foods, you know, maybe 2 weeks prior to, try to be as close to all natural the week of, you know, just eating fruits and vegetables, because all that stuff will aid in your body not having to work as hard to slip into that state.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing that up. You know, there's a lot of, listen, a lot of people that don't do it, that's fine too, but I agree with you. Especially like a session like yours that was extremely physical. I can only imagine what the experience would have been if you weren't as clean, right? Because I've gone under over 20 times for sessions. I've received sessions. And if I even ate wrong, like lunch or breakfast, and it's not clean, oh, I'm in for a little bit of a rough ride. That's for sure. But I know there's people out there that say, hey, you can have caffeine right before, you can have anything you want. But I do agree with you on that. I've actually had clients before they book with me say, you know, the weirdest thing, Saba, I've completely been doing smoothies for the last 2 weeks. I don't even know why. And I was like, because your body's probably getting ready. You know, I've done ayahuasca as well, and I'm familiar with this energy that is present with QHHT, and there's so many similarities. And you wouldn't really understand that unless you've done, like you said, a wonderful ceremony like that you can understand the similarities and really understand the importance of that. So thanks for sharing that.
If you want the cleanest and the purest version of yourself to come through, and if you want to be an energetic conduit for the session, for your practitioner, you have to do your part in being as clean as possible. Now, that is different for everybody, you know what I mean? Depending on what your lifestyle is, and no judgment when it comes to it. If you want to have the best experience, you want to be as light as possible. And we'll leave it at that.
Right. Exactly. You know, I have clients that have all kinds of interesting foods, and they're like, hey, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, sure, no worries. And I'm sure they're going to have the session they're supposed to have. But, and it gets funny because I don't want to tell people before session, like, hey, you know, go on a 2-week cleanse of some kind, you know, because it's a touchy subject, right? and it's not part of what QHHT says anyhow, but I'm familiar with this energy, right? Because like I said, I've worked under these different beautiful plant medicines, and I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize you. So, and I know that when I eat clean and I feel lighter, I'm definitely going to be able to work with these energies a little bit easier. So yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So now the induction, from what I can recall, you actually went in with such ease. It was amazing, but that makes sense because I do recall you saying, wait a minute, what's going on here when we were doing the interview portion. So you were definitely ready.
Listening to the Dolores book series, and I highly recommend anybody that wants to do a session, just listen to those and get a sense of what you're getting into. Once, and I don't know how you guys do what it is that you do, nor do I need to know all that. But once you get, for me, all I know is that once I sat down, I was already in that space. I don't know what the science is behind what you guys do, but I just felt that I had already done a meditation. And I was in like a meditative state is what it was. Once I sat down and started talking with you. I don't know if that was like an agreement between my higher self and you prior to coming into the session or not, but I was already relaxed. So there was really nothing to do except just put me on that table, and it was off to the clouds. I could have did the session. I didn't even need to sit on your table. I could have just did the session straight from my chair with you.
Talk about when you got off the cloud, because you mentioned the clouds. There's a part in the session where you get off the cloud and you step into a scene. So take me through that.
So we get on the table. I get the equipment on me, and we go into a space. I think you do, like a countdown or something like that. That's the one thing I don't I'll remember the procedure. But once I'm on the cloud and you jump off, you kind of fall into whatever scene is meant for you. So what I remember is falling into some sort of like forest, tropical, and I'm a little, I'm a boy, I have shoes on and something around my waist, long hair, I'm just kind of anxious and nervous being, in this environment. They take me out, right? But I have the good sense to leave that scene and observe it before, things get pretty nasty. And it's just one of those things where I'm describing a death scenario, but I'm also removed from it and can observe it for what it is. Whatever it is for you to see and to take away from it whatever it is you need to take away from it.
So thanks for sharing that, Patrick. What do you remember what you took away from that scene after the young boy transitioned?
It's one of those things where you have to experience everything. Is the thing that comes to mind, however you can, is what I take away from it. But I would love to have your insight on it.
Right. In the script, when we're working with the clients, part of it is going through the death scene and also saying to the client, you can watch it as an observer if you want to. And to really stand and look at that scene to really see what the purpose of that life was, and what were some of the lessons learned, right? And sometimes it's a process. I've had sessions from 4 to 5 years ago where I listen to them and I'm like, wow, I just got something new from that session, so they're forever giving, always. So that's wonderful. But when it comes to processing the session, it's kind of like ayahuasca, right? I can tell you what I felt in an ayahuasca ceremony that I participated in and say, this is what I experienced. But there's that level of integration that is done with myself, for myself, and because it's so unique, right? It's like a fingerprint. And same goes with QHHT, is that's where the integration work is. Because yes, the client, or even you, Patrick, can come in for the session. And then, as you know, throughout time, you've been processing it. This is just one part that we're talking about. So when I go over the sessions with my clients, I definitely say, look, there is a level of integration and it's so personal. And I don't want to give my opinion of what that should mean, because that's something that my clients saw, experienced, and I don't want to put a name to that experience or whatever that perception is, or whatever that lesson was there.
I mean, even as many times as I have listened to the tape, I guess I'll get different or a better insight as to the message at some other time. Right now, it's just taking it for what it is that, I saw a death scene, which I would imagine all of us have experienced, multiple times. So don't take it. It's just part of, our reincarnation process. You know what I mean? And not take it for anything more than what it is for right now. I'm sure the meaning will be conveyed to me at some point.
Right. And also, when you have a chance to review it, I ask after the person has transitioned, I'll ask right after, like, oh, as you view the life from that position, and you go over, what do you feel like you've learned and what's some of the lessons? So when you have a moment, definitely go into that and listen to it. It'll be interesting. But again, that can shift too, because I've gone through some death scenes, and when I'm hearing the position from that view, it shifts for me too. Like I said, there's just it's so interesting how these sessions can shift. Like I can say, for example, I've had one where it was learning honesty, or how great it was to be honest in that life, how amazing that was. So sometimes it's one word, sometimes it's like, 10 words, I don't know. But so definitely tap into that when you listen to the recording. You did say some beautiful words after, which may not be something that is true for you at this moment, and that may shift as you listen to it again. You may say, oh, you know what? Listening to that life, I actually learned this from that life, And so from there, do you remember what scene was next?
I remember ascending into the stars. And then I want to say that I was the next picture that I have in my mind, honestly, is a light, a lot of light. And I was scooping the light like it was water and like kind of splashing it around. So if you could imagine being in like a shallow pool, right? But the shallow pool was light, and you would just scoop a handful of the light and you would just kind of like splash it and flick it like you're in like a little kiddie pool. And it was like the most fun thing. It was very simple, nothing, no frills. It just felt like, and something, I could have sworn you said something about, or I said something that it was bright in here. It was really bright. And could you close the blinds or something like that? And you're like, no, you're connected to source or something. And I was like, oh, cause it's like, it just all of a sudden got really, really bright. I'm playing with this light. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a great time. And then after that, I kind of exited and started to go down a slide, but we'll leave it there.
Right. You, actually, yeah, you were saying, oh my gosh, can you close the blinds? There's too much light in here. And I said, no, I didn't open the blinds. They're the same what they were. And I've had this happen numerous times where my clients are under and they're like, oh my gosh, did you turn on a light? Is there a light on me? Like, what's happening? And I'm like, no, I didn't do anything. And I've had that a few times where they're in there and they're describing, and it's different for everyone. And I remember you saying, actually, you're like, I'm with source. Like, what's happening? And you were just like, I'm so happy. I'm just so happy. But yeah, I've heard that before where people are like, are the lights on? I'm like, did you just put a light on me? I'm like, nope, everything's the same.
Yeah, it was, and I guess it was one of those things where after you see or experience like, a death scene, then you had to go and remove yourself from that and just like shift your focus and just get into like a happy place. But in that trip I was in, it was like floating up through through like the blackness, through like stars and space, and then getting to this place that was almost like a sun. And it was just, it was just such a nice, warm, inviting place where, you just played with light all day until you were done. And then after that, I remember sliding down this like cosmic slide. Again, this is only what I saw and what's in my brain. Sliding down this cosmic slide, and there were people on either side of the slide, and everybody was clapping. There were people, cloaked with robes on, people of all different like races, aliens, anything you could have seen in any sort of movie. And they're all just like clapping me and, celebrating me on this journey, of this slide that was going on, which took me into my next vision or my next scenario. So, yes.
Yeah, that was so amazing when you were describing. You were like, there's so many people here congratulating me and just saying like, you did great. And I thought that was so amazing because I could literally feel the energy from your description.
sometimes you feel like you're alone, for lack of a better term, sometimes. But then when you're, especially in that specific instance, you're like, oh, there's this massive star family that's with you, that is cheering you on, that's always got your back, that's protecting you and celebrating you, you know what I mean? And, giving you encouragement. And that's kind of what I was seeing as, we were taking that cosmic slide down into this next scenario. So it was super cool, actually.
Amazing. So now you go down this cosmic slide, and where are you next?
There are a couple pictures that come to my mind, and I don't recall really the order, but there's a picture of my house as a little child. There's a picture of a giant flower, which is another slide. So that happened, cosmic slide. So that happened after. And then there was a picture of me floating in the water. And there was like this massive, predator type shark that was, lurking underneath it. So to answer your question, it was my house. I slid down. I believe I was in my childhood house, walking around, having a good time. Everything, was cool, family around. I walk outside in the back in like an open grassy area. I look above the house and there's this massive ship that is hovering above the house. Yes, there's a massive ship, like disc shaped, like craft, hovering above the house. And it took a bunch of my cousins and family members up and left me. Yes, that's what I remember.
Right. I remember you said there's a ship here and they're taking my cousins. They're taking everyone.
That's correct. Yes. And that brought on a sense of abandonment, maybe, or just a sense of alone. I just felt alone because everybody was going up in this ship and they were leaving me. But I guess my purpose was to be here.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. And so that was something also that you were processing live when you were in the session. Yeah, you gave a lot of details on that day as well. With your cousins, and there was a window, and you were also, I know you saw the ship, but yeah, you kept talking about a window as well. But yeah, that was really profound.
I don't recall the window.
No.
I don't recall the window, but I can imagine that I talked about it. And even playing my session back for some reason, I listened to it again just recently, and I don't recall me mentioning a window, but probably because I've seen that's like a reoccurring theme in things that I visualize, just open windows. So quite possibly the real profound thing in that segment of the journey was this craft just hovering over a blue sky, green grass, yellow house. And this massive thing just hovering right over the house. Everybody getting, for lack of a better word, beamed up and gone. And I'm just sitting there by myself, like, what's going on? Why don't you take me too? So.
Right. Yeah, that came out of nowhere. Because it just sounded like a regular day. And you're like, there's a ship here.
Yeah, and I didn't really, it's funny too, because I didn't really start to see things until I became an adult.
Yeah, it gets kind of interesting when that starts happening, when the client goes into their actual life that they're living now. Because remember, we call it past life regression, but it could just be current life regression. Some sessions are like that, where they see scenes in their current life. I've had women regress and men regress in utero in their mama's belly. I've had that a couple times. And so it can be a current life situation as to, what is real or not, and I can't remember if we had discussed it and what happened in the subconscious portion, because there was so much energy when we started doing the body scan. So I don't even recall at that moment if we did hear from them or if we got an answer. But yeah, it makes you wonder. Right. And here's the fun part, and why I am a QHHT practitioner, because my clients leave empowered. They have a feeling of what it feels like to connect with higher self. And you can go home into that meditative state, like you said, and tap in, or however you tap in. For some people, they're like, oh, that's my higher self. Okay, I recognize it. And it's as a word that could be put to it is my intuition. Oh, I've always, had that feeling. And so one of the biggest intentions that I have for my clients is for them to remember that. Now, the energy always wants to work with you. Okay. And honestly, sometimes the energy passes right by them and they don't recognize it. And they're like, I don't know, and I just kind of look at them like, what? That was their higher self. I totally felt the energy shift in the room. I can just, obviously, we're trained to see that, and I will pause the session if I feel like there's too much interference going on. But by the time you're there, you're tapped in, you know what I mean? And, yeah, I'd love to hear what you and your higher self figure out on that one.
You're one of the best QHHT practitioners. And yes, I'm very curious now as to get some answers on that. So yes, absolutely.
Thank you for that compliment.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, I want people to walk in, walk out, and just know how to tap in. So it'll be fun to talk to you afterwards to see what you and your higher self figure out on that one. Which I'm pretty sure it's in the recording, but if we don't have a clear answer, that means that there was no answer provided. So from there, in that scene with the ship, what happens after that?
Ended up in the water. Dark water. There was like a platform, like a structure in the water, and it was like burning, and it was like crashing into the sea. And there was something in the water that came up and grabbed me and brought me underneath. So it went from like a crystal, diamond-y, crystalline, like space body, down slide again to this flower type thing, and then down into the water is what I visualize, is the pictures that I have in my head.
Right. That was intense.
To say the least.
Yeah, you had a lot of different scenes.
It was really like being on a ayahuasca or doing psychedelics or things like that. You know, you go through this journey, you know, and then, you know, sometimes, you know, people purge, they throw up or whatever the case is. Like, this was a legitimate journey without the medicine, which was, to me, even more fascinating because the visuals were just as intense. The stuff still, you know, I still have the pictures in my mind from going on. It was just one afternoon. We were there for one afternoon almost 6 months ago, and I still have those pictures in my head, you know, and there was a lot of stuff that went on in those visuals.
Yes, at that point the energy was pretty intense, you know. It was building up, I would say. And some of these sessions are, like I said, very energetic. I don't want someone to listen to this recording and go, oh, you know, that's what I want to see in my session. Because, as you know, reading Dolores Cannon's books, you really don't know what you're going to experience unless you're there, you know. And I've had clients, some of them are in the healing colors most of their session and just receiving all this healing up and down their body. Some of them hop like yours did, just kept hopping between scenes and are very clear. Some people can sense into their scene just by intuition and just a knowing, and have the visuals understood in a completely different sense. And that's the part that I explain to all my clients, is that your eyes are closed. So the information can come in so many different ways that I don't want my clients to focus on, hey, it needs to be like this, because Patrick's session was like, you know, he was describing this whole experience. On numerous occasions with people that have had sit with sacred medicine, have said, wow, this is very similar. In fact, I was trained under Julia Cannon in class, who's, of course, as you know, Dolores Cannon's daughter. And this is before I was introduced to plant medicine, before ayahuasca called me. People in front of me were like, in class, going, this feels like we're on ayahuasca right now. Like, what's happening? So yeah, there's something happening. From there, when you said the purging, I want to talk about your purge when we went into the subconscious portion. Are you ready to connect with that? Talk about your sensations that you were feeling once that connection happened.
The frequency changed. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Frequency changed, everything dropped. So what I recall is, whereas and it was so interesting to change, because there was like a definite shift once you went from the visuals or the past lives or the visions, and you started talking to the subconscious, because it was almost like you're at play when you're going through the visions. right? You do your thing in the visions, you take a step back, you take it for what it is, and then you hop along to your next adventure. When you're with your subconscious, it feels like the grown-ups in the room. And I remember, and then listening to the tapes further confirmed it, the frequency and the modulation of the voice changed. It went from, journey to class, right? Like I'm in class and there's this teacher that is just giving all this information and at the same time healing the body. So it became, it was speaking, the voice dropped, and then there were visceral reactions within the body. And what I remember specifically was release, right? I remember saying release, release, meaning like a release of tension or release of anything that didn't serve me at that time or in general. It was just a release of that and a healing of it. So it was almost like a repair that was happening, which was super interesting because it was one of those things where once the SC got a hold of the body and you really got in contact with it, there is a physiological change of the body. There's a release in the body. There's a modulation in the voice.
Your body was shaking quite a bit, really intensely. You were sweating profusely, which I found very interesting because when you first came in, you said, "I drank really light water today. I don't remember if you ate, but you kept it super light so that you would be fine." Before the session begins, just for viewers, I asked the client to go ahead and empty their bladder because sometimes the bladder likes to relax, and that way they're not focusing on, not holding and having to go to the bathroom. So I always say that in case you do need to go, don't worry. You'll go, safely like you normally do, and you'll come back and start where you left off. And you did that several times. And you would come right back and finish what you were saying once you left to go to the bathroom. And it was very physical. There was a lot going on with physical cleansings happening in different organs. There was a lot going on with thought patterns. There was a lot going on with just overall releasing. And that seemed to be the theme that your subconscious was working with, was that release. And what's amazing about you, Patrick, is that you are open to understanding what energy is. So you caught on really quick. You're like, wait a minute, this is not me. Because you can feel, you understand energy a little bit more, which is amazing. But let's just say someone didn't understand energy and had your session. There's no doubting it, of course, because it was very different. But some of the subconscious voices come in a different tonality or a different inflection. But I have to say that it's really important for the client to let go. To really let go and let their consciousness just kind of step to the side. So as this experience is happening, where's your consciousness?
as open as, I might have been in the session, and knowing about energy definitely helped, but there's no guarantee, right? I can, at least in my case, there's no guarantee that something like that's going to happen where, you just completely like open up. I think it was the ease and the comfort of the space that you created that allowed that to happen. So to answer your question, where did it go? I think that conscious part of me was glad to take a break and it knew that, we can take a break and allow the subconscious to connect and we're okay. And that was just because of, the conversations and everything that we had done leading up to that point. So the conscious mind was like, you know what, we're good. We don't have to do anything. We can stand right here. We can move out the way. We don't have to do anything, but we're not going to get in the way of what's going on right now.
Right. You did wonderful. The scan went amazing. There was all this work being done on your body. I remember there was all your organs. I remember not all, but quite a few of them. And there was wonderful conversations with your subconscious. Do you remember anything that you care to share right now?
What was interesting about the conversations that were had, aside from the whole body releasing and scanning and healing and all that stuff, was that there were specific things and specific timelines. And maybe this is a good point to bring up, is that there were specific things and specific timelines that were talked about, and those things haven't played out yet. So it's interesting once I guess, once that something is going to play out, it doesn't necessarily play out in the way that it just doesn't play out in exactly the way that you describe it, which I find interesting, because it described a specific scenario for me that is completely different than the scenario I'm in now. And I'm thinking maybe the scenario I'm in now will catapult me into that other scenario, or there might be something different. But I'm very curious as to your opinion on the timeline of events that was discussed versus what is happening at the present moment.
Right. Okay. So this is a fun topic for me because, first of all, your subconscious or your higher self gave descriptions, unsolicited descriptions. I didn't really ask that. Well, no, I started asking like when on certain questions, and they got like really specific. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And here's what I have to say about that, because I firsthand have experiences when I receive a session, is that I truly needed to hear it that way at that time. I couldn't hear it any other way. If I heard it in a different way, it would have taken me down another avenue. That I know, reviewing it now, I needed to go that way. And it's one of those things, because it's trippy, because you're like, wait a minute, you guys told me March, and we're now in June, you know? And I will just say also that the subconscious is really good about giving dates sometimes, and they come through, and they're also really good when they don't, because it's exactly what the person needs to hear at that given time. Otherwise, the mind starts doing alterations and starts looking somewhere else and moving. I mean, for those that understand this, but moving timelines, going in another direction. And what I say to people is the sessions will come out exactly how you're supposed to hear it, and in the way you're supposed to hear it. It won't be short of that. I've had clients that have been on the search for answers from 50 years ago, find the answers, and are completely overwhelmed because there's just like, there was so much love in that space that it's almost like an NDE. And you hear a lot of people who experience NDEs and they think about like, oh my gosh, I miss that. I love that experience. And they have to process that for a while and then really understand what that means. So it's a journey is my answer to you. That when you are experiencing the subconscious giving you specifics like yours did, because yours was amazing. I mean, there was some information there that came through that I won't go into, but yeah, some really detailed information that I will say it's the way that it needed to come through at that time.
Maybe it's not the timeline I should focus on. Maybe it's the information, right? Maybe it's like, okay, don't worry about the time because the stuff is going to play out how and when it's supposed to play out. Know that there's this information out there that you didn't know, and just be aware of that. So when the time comes, it won't be, that big of a shock to you, is what I'm thinking in my mind now.
Right. Because your information was quite, there's a lot of information. Hey, there's sessions that like I said, I look back that, wow, I just had one the other day, and let me tell you, Patrick, the physical sensations I felt in that one, and I told you I've received over 20 physical sensations I felt in this last one I just received. I could not explain to you. It was so intense that I was just like folded over in fetal position, holding my stomach, and I just couldn't anymore. I almost tapped out of the session because it was so intense, because there was so much energy being cleared from just picking up stuff that wasn't mine. So when it comes to these sessions, I don't know what to say. They're so unique, and the information that will be shared takes time to process. Again, sometimes I have clients that come in and then the information just passes them right by, and the information's like wanting to work with them, and they're like, yeah, I guess that was my higher self. And inside I'm like, huh? That was a diamond you just saw. That was gold you just saw. Like, you didn't recognize it.
And that's the thing, right? Because, thinking about it, because it was a big information dump, and I'm thinking to myself, had all that stuff played out in the exact way it was described, maybe that would have been slightly unfulfilling, because they say something is said to you, and then it plays out just like that to the letter, not more than 2 months later or whatever the time frame was. But maybe it's part of the because like they're giving you the answers to the test, but they don't give you the time. You don't know when the test is going to happen, so to speak. So maybe it's a surprise. You know, you got the information now, and the test is going to come at some random time that you're not expecting, and you have the answers. Now, you know, it's going to be on you to navigate that test when that time comes. Maybe that's what it is.
Right. I mean, we don't know. You know, I've had clients where it plays out, where I've had clients been given information about their father going to be transitioning soon, and their father's, you know, fine, was going through some issues, of course, but that the son needed to connect with his dad because his dad was going to be leaving soon, and they were estranged. And I'm saying within days, so my client walked out of my office, marched into his dad's home, reconnected with his dad, and everything, you know, they just reconnected, and sure enough, the dad was in the hospital. I haven't talked to my client since. I'm not sure what's going on, but it wasn't looking good. And so sometimes it does play out that literal, you know, and sometimes there's that information, which I don't know why it's given that way, the way it is. For me, you know, there was, when I was asking for a certain healing, I wasn't receiving it. And I was like, everything else got fixed. Why not this one thing? And my higher self would kind of like just say, sure, it's okay. It looks good, you know. And I was so frustrated because I was still experiencing those symptoms that were very intense. And it led me to find another spiritual teacher that I've known for many lifetimes. So I'm so glad my higher self did not tell me that, oh, by the way, you're going to find another spiritual teacher of yours that's going to really help you in this lifetime. Because then I would have turned up and searched for this spiritual teacher, 10 different people, and been going down 10 different paths. And so I'm really happy that none of the information was shared, because in my stumbling and searching for that one thing that I was just so wanting to figure out, I was able to come across somebody that was an amazing part of my life to share information with me for my better understanding and for my betterment in this lifetime, to be the better version of myself. And had I heard the answer any other way when subconscious was answering, and I'm telling you, I probably had numerous sessions working on this one thing, but it had to happen exactly the way it had to happen. And it was in divine timing that everything sorted out.
Right. No, at the end of the day, everything is divine timing, right? And we just gotta continue to navigate our feelings and emotions, you know. And just like you said, you found what you were supposed to find as a result of that searching around. So it's just trusting in that there is a divine plan and a divine time for things to play out, and just have faith in that.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you, Patrick, for your time today. You know, before we end this wonderful conversation, you know, I just want to share with those listening, you know, the importance of trusting yourself and really letting go of having to control any part of the experience will really without any expectations. The biggest thing I want to share there is zero expectations, because you really never know, in your case, what slide you're going to go to. Because the slides were your transport in your sessions, where it's going to lead you. Any amazing parting words that you have to share for others who are listening on how they can really connect in and get the most out of their session. You've really shared some amazing pointers already, but if anything else, let me know.
First of all, if you're not familiar with the books, pick up one of them, get one of them on audio books, and just get like a sense of like the structure of how a session goes, right? And then from there, the only thing you really can do to prepare is just have a sense of trust, right? Just trust your practitioner. To, do your best to get your diet in order, so once you go in, you don't have anything that's competing, with your attention, in your body, because it's very key to be as present as possible. And then 3, just to trust in the belief and just let all that go and just see where the ride takes you. Because it is a ride that you're going to go on. You have no earthly idea what you're going to see. And, but don't judge it. Just take the information, take as much time as you need to process it, and then follow up at some point, if you need to, and ask questions, find a spiritual teacher, or, book another session with your practitioner, whatever the case is, just to get some understanding. Because in a three-dimensional sense, this is like therapy. And then in like a metaphysical sense, this is like, healing and expanding and searching for answers at the same time. So there's a lot of layers with this work that if you're open to it, you can get what it is you're looking for. You just got to be open and trust the process.
Absolutely. And let go.
100%. Like, you have to, if you want to get the most out of your session, aside from the preparation standpoint, with the understanding what you're getting into and the food, the letting go part is probably the biggest. Because you can have your diet in order, right? Or you can eat like crap, or never listen to a tape. But if you don't do that last part, which is just let go, it doesn't matter what you did prior, because you're not going to get anything out of your session.
No, right.
So
exactly. That letting go is such an important part, because some people say, hey, do I need to meditate hours before? Do I need to do this or that? And I'm like, you need to let go. Like, really, that let go, people, think, because there's that suggestive hypnosis that you're like, you're hypnotizing, go to sleep now. And it's not like that. There's that part where you truly need to let go and just let it happen. And it's not something that you consciously go, okay, I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go. All right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to let go. No, it's not like that. It's just more like, all right, let's let go. Everything's going to be just fine. And just step into that place of trust. Trusting yourself is a very, very important part of any work that you do, let alone QHHT. Just trusting yourself is really the key.
And you know if you have let go. You'll know it because the state that you're in prior to going to a session, and then the state you're in when you sit down and you are talking and things like that, you'll feel it's almost like a bubble that you walk into, right? You'll it'll be like a visceral just calmness that just envelops you. You're in a zone with a trust and belief that everything is going to be okay. And from there, you've already let go at that point, So definitely, yeah, just trust yourself at the end of the day.
Before we end, let's talk about how many hours you slept after your session.
That is I almost thank you for bringing that up. So the session, from my understanding, because that's another thing, when you're in it, you don't know how much time goes by. So for me, what I thought was like 30, 40 minutes of meditation ended up being, a few hours that the session went on. It became almost like a marathon. But then after the session, I remember being extremely hungry. And that's one thing that I didn't follow, is that after your session, you're supposed to eat light and just be really, really gentle with yourself. I remember getting a massive pizza and eating the whole thing by myself. But I slept probably, I think it was like 14 hours after the fact, because I remember the session ended probably like around 5 in the evening. I got home after eating around 7, and I slept until from like 7:30 until probably noon that next day. I was so mentally and physically exhausted from sitting on a table, from laying on the table. That was profound. That was probably, aside from, that was the part of the journey that I was like, oh, something physiological did happen.
So I remember how many hours you slept, because you told me like 3 days later. Here you go. It was 16 hours. I just slept 16 hours. Now everyone's response is different. Some people, it's like when I say that everyone's different, like really everyone's different. Some people walk out and they have so much energy. Some of their sessions were so physical in the sense that their body was releasing so much and working so much, and there was so much being done with the higher self that they will sleep. Again, you need to monitor what's normal for you. There may be something else going on. I don't know. I don't want someone to be like, well, this was going on and I was told that 16 hours is normal. No, you have to monitor yourself to see what's normal and be accountable for yourself and really, feel into like, hey, this is normal or not. But with you, it was like, yeah, you slept 16 hours. The energy is interesting on what happens with how time feels. Sometimes, you know, some people can track it pretty accurate because they're super present, not letting go. But even ones that do let go, sometimes they're just, for whatever reason, they know the time. I don't want that to be a judgment for anyone. If they're like, oh, I knew exactly how long time went, maybe I didn't let go. No, not true. There's just, in the quantum healing hypnosis technique, there is no way to use any kind of ruler to measure anything. So I just say throw it out the window. You know, what applies in the 3D world just doesn't apply there.
And I would co-sign on that. Because I didn't know how long the session was. I didn't know when we started, when we finished. Everything just became a bunch of mental pictures, and then we were done.
Amazing. Patrick, again, I have so much gratitude for you jumping on here and sharing your experience. Thank you so much.